Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're opening a file that feels less like a literary critique and more like a cold case investigation.
Yeah, or a psychological thriller.
Exactly. We're looking at a stack of documents centering on one very specific, very controversial premise. The idea that the man we know as William Shakespeare wasn't just a pen name, but a phantom. A mask worn by the philosopher and statesman Francis Bacon.
Right, and it's a theory that has sparked, bar fights in English departments for over a century. But the source material we're working with today is a real vintage find.
Yeah, a blast from the past.
We're dusting off a text from 1891 by W.F.C. Wigston. It's titled Francis Bacon, Poet, Prophet, Philosopher versus Phantom Captain Shakespeare.
Phantom Captain Shakespeare. I mean, that is a killer title. It sounds like a Scooby-Doo villain or something.
It does have a certain ring to it.
Yeah.
But Wigston is deadly serious here. He treats the name Shakespeare as a ghost, an illusion designed to hide a secret society, a hidden history, and a philosophy that was way too dangerous to be spoken openly in the 17th century.
Okay, so before we dive in, I have to play the skeptic for a second. Because usually when I see these Bacon wrote Shakespeare theories, I roll my eyes a little.
Sure.
It feels like people just want the smartest guy in the room to have written the best plays. But looking through Wigston's notes, this isn't the usual argument, is it?
No, not at all. Wigston isn't interested in handwriting analysis or matching up signatures. He's looking at what he calls the hidden life of the texts.
The hidden life.
Right. We're talking about connections to secret societies like the Rosicrucians, weirdly suspicious dates regarding Shakespeare's death, mathematical ciphers that honestly make my head spin, and psychological profiles that match up so perfectly it's actually kind of unnerving.
Well, let's start with the secret society angle then, because the source mentions the Rosicrucians about 100 times. For those of us who didn't major in 17th century mysticism, who are these guys? Are we talking wizards? Illuminati?
Kind of like the original Invisible College. They were a legendary, possibly mythical brotherhood in the early 1600s, mostly based in Germany. They claimed to possess this secret wisdom that combined science, alchemy, and religion to reform the world.
Okay.
And the rumor at the time, a very strong rumor, was that Francis Bacon was heavily involved, possibly even the Imperator, the head of the order.
So Bacon is the secret leader of a mystical frat house. Where does Shakespeare fit into this?
It comes down to a really specific set of dates, 1616 and 1617.
Shakespeare dies in 1616.
All right, in Stratford in April 1616. The very next year, 1617, the Rosicrucians published one of their big manifestos in Germany called the Confessio Fraternitatis.
And this manifesto has a bone to pick with someone.
It does. Buried in the Latin text, there is a very weird specific attack. It denounces a stage player as an imposter. It describes a man with sufficient ingenuity for imposition.
Ingenuity for imposition. That sounds like polite 17th century speak for professional con artist.
Exactly. And Wigston argues this isn't just a random metaphor. He points out that this attack appears on pages 52 and 53 of the Confessio.
Okay, wait. You know I'm going to stop you there. Pages 52 and 53. Are we really doing numerology right out of the gate?
Bear with me, because Wigston insists this is the key. Look at the timeline. Shakespeare was baptized on April 26, 1564. When he died in April 1616, he had just finished his 52nd year and was entering his 53rd year.
Oh. So he was 52, going on 53.
Correct. And the attack on the stage player imposter appears on page 53 of the Rosicrucian text, published immediately after his death.
Wow.
Wigston argues this alignment is a deliberate mark. It's the Rosicrucians telling the initiated reader that the man who just died, the actor, he was the imposter we're talking about.
That's a spooky coincidence. I'll give you that. But page numbers can be accidental. Printers make mistakes. Does he have anything more concrete than a page number?
He does. He tracks the movement of people.
Oh.
Specifically, a guy named Michael Mayer.
Who is that?
Mayer was a famous German alchemist and a top-tier Rosicrucian. And guess where he was in 1616?
Don't tell me he was in Stratford.
Close. He was in England. He spent time in London, likely circling the exact same orbit as Francis Bacon. Then he goes back to Germany and publishes a book called Lucis Sirius in late 1616.
Right.
And in that book, he tells a funny story called The Waking Man's Dream.
Oh, I read this in the notes. This is the story about the drunk guy. Right?
Yes, it's a story about a drunken cobbler or tanner who passes out dead drunk on the street. A nobleman finds him, decides to play a prank, and has his servants dress the drunk guy in velvet, put him in a feather bed.
And when he wakes up, they convince him he's actually a lord who has been in a coma.
You got it.
Wait a second. That is literally the plot of The Induction to the Taming of the Shrew, the character Christopher Sly.
It is identical, down to the specific details.
So you have a German alchemist visiting England the year Shakespeare dies, hanging out with Bacon, and immediately publishing the exact plot of a Shakespeare intro.
Yeah. Wigston asks, how did Michael Mayer, writing in Latin in Germany, suddenly come up with that specific story right after visiting England? The implication is that he got it from the source. He got it from Bacon.
And the metaphor is pretty on the nose, isn't it?
Incredibly on the nose. The drunken beggar dressed up as a lord is the perfect metaphor for the uneducated actor Shakespeare being dressed up in the literary genius of Bacon.
Wow.
Wigston thinks Mayer published it as a subtle nod to the truth. Like, hey, look, we dressed the peasant in the philosopher's robes.
Okay, that is significantly more compelling than the page number thing. It feels like an inside joke among the intelligentsia of the time. Like, remember that time we convinced the world the actor wrote the plays?
Precisely. But Wigston doesn't stop at the secret societies. He actually opens up the history books. And this is where the detective part of the story really kicks in for me.
Let's hear it.
Because if you look at the Shakespeare plays, there is a gaping hole in the historical timeline.
I noticed this. You have plays for King John, Richard II, Henry IV, Henry V, Henry VI, Richard III, and then it jumps all the way to Henry VIII. Who's missing?
Henry VII, the first Tudor king, the guy who ended the Wars of the Roses. It's a massive omission. It's like watching a movie series about U.S. presidents and skipping Lincoln.
But Bacon wrote about him.
He did.
Yeah.
Francis Bacon wrote a prose history titled The History of the Reign of King Henry VII. Wigston argues this was intentional.
Intentional how?
Bacon left the gap in the plays so he could fill it with his prose work, creating a bridge that physically links the two bodies of work together.
But isn't it possible Shakespeare just didn't find Henry VI interesting? Maybe his reign was boring for the stage?
Maybe. But then you look at the text itself. Wigston finds details in Bacon's prose history that mirror the plays in ways that go way beyond just recording history. Take the murder of the princes in the Tower from Richard III.
The classic villain moment.
Right. In both the play Richard III and Bacon's prose history, they named the exact same three murderers. Sir James Tyrrell, John Dighton, and Miles Forrest.
Okay, playing devil's advocate again, weren't those just the guys who did it? Wouldn't any historian name them?
Fair point. But look at how they describe the burial. Both texts mentioned a priest at the tower who buried the bodies and then died shortly after, taking the secret location to his grave.
Oh, I see.
Bacon writes that the priest buried them in some place which could not be known. The play has Tyrrell say the chaplain buried them, but how or in what place, I do not know.
It's the exact same narrative beat.
And then there's the incest angle.
Yeah.
In the play, Richard III is a monster because he wants to marry his niece Elizabeth. The play makes a huge deal about this being a sin, a violation of degrees forbidden.
Degrees forbidden being the religious rules about who you can marry.
Exactly. Now, when Bacon writes his history years later, he dwells on this exact same point. He writes that Richard was suspected of poisoning his wife to make the bed vacant for his niece, specifically mentioning the degrees forbidden. Wigston argues that Bacon is essentially quoting his own previous work, the play, in his later history.
Yeah.
He's keeping the thematic continuity alive.
And it goes further, doesn't it? The source mentions something about Perkin Warbeck.
Right. Perkin Warbeck was a famous imposter during Henry VIII's reign. He claimed to be the Duke of York, one of those missing princes. Bacon's history goes into massive, obsessive detail about Warbeck.
Which ties right back into the themes of imposture and rightful heritage that run through so many of the plays.
Exactly. It shows a mind obsessed with the mechanics of fake identities.
It really does seem like they are focused on the same specific details. But let's get to the part that actually gave me goosebumps. The psychological profiling.
Oh, yeah.
Because Wigston claims that Bacon's essays, his philosophical writings, are basically the cheat codes for Shakespeare's characters.
This is, in my opinion, the absolute strongest part of Wigston's case. He argues that the plays are action and the essays are contemplation. The abstract thoughts of the philosopher become the flesh and blood motivations of the characters.
Let's look at the essay on deformity. Bacon has some pretty harsh views on how physical deformity affects a person's mind.
He does. Bacon writes that deformed persons are void of natural affection. He says they have a perpetual spur to rescue themselves from scorn, which makes them extreme bold.
Right.
He argues they often turn to malice, essentially, to get revenge on nature.
Void of natural affection, bold, malice. That sounds like a casting call for Richard III.
It's almost verbatim. Look at Richard's opening soliloquy. I, that am curdled of this fair proportion, am determined to prove a villain.
Yeah.
Richard is the living embodiment of Bacon's theory. He is deformed, therefore he rejects natural affection, therefore he chooses malice. It's like Bacon wrote the diagnosis in the essay and then created the patient in the play to prove it.
Then there's the essay of envy. Bacon writes that deformed persons and eunuchs and old men and bastards are envious.
And who is the ultimate envious character in Shakespeare? Edmund in King Lear, the bastard.
His famous speech, "Why bastard, wherefore base?"
Exactly. That speech is the dramatization of Bacon's essay. Bacon says bastards are envious because they're fighting against custom and legitimacy.
And Edmund literalizes this.
He questions the custom that brands him base and declares nature his goddess. He is acting out the exact philosophical argument Bacon made on paper.
And Wigston also brings up Thersites from Troilus and Cressida, right? Calling him the core of envy.
Yes, another perfect match for Bacon's specific definitions.
It's fascinating because it makes the characters feel less like random strokes of genius and more like scientific experiments. Like Bacon is testing his theories in a lab simulation called the Globe Theater.
That's a great way to put it. And look at Iago and Othello. Wigston connects him to Bacon's essay of cunning.
Oh, this one I loved. Bacon describes a trick called turning the cat in the pan. First of all, please tell me that doesn't mean what I think it means. It sounds messy.
No actual cats were harmed.
Yeah.
Turning the cat in the pan is an old idiom. It means reversing the order of things to make it look like the other person started the conversation or the idea when really you did.
So, gaslighting.
A very specific type of gaslighting. And Wigston points out that Iago does exactly this. Think about the scene where he warns Othello. He says, "Oh, beware, my lord of jealousy."
Right. By warning him against jealousy, he makes it seem like Othello's the one in danger of being jealous, even though Iago was the one planting the idea in his head.
He frames himself as the reluctant friend holding Othello back, when he is actually the one pushing him forward. It is a textbook application of what Bacon defined as turning the cat in the pan.
And there's one more psychological match, right? Othello himself and the essay of suspicion.
Right. Bacon argues that suspicions that the mind of itself gathers are but buzzes. But suspicions that are artificially nourished have stings.
Which is Othello's entire arc. His suspicion isn't natural, it's artificially nourished by Iago.
It's perfectly mapped out.
Okay, so the psychology matches, the history matches. The secret society stuff is highly suspicious. But Wigston has one more card to play, and it brings us back to that number 53. We have to talk about the cipher.
I warned you there would be math.
I'm ready. Walk us through it.
Wigston claims there is a mathematical link between the Merry Wives of Windsor and Bacon's history of Henry VII. He opens the first folio edition of the plays, the big original book. He goes to the comedies. He turns to page 53.
Page 53 again?
On page 53, there is a scene in Merry Wives where a schoolmaster is quizzing a boy. The woman, Mrs. Quickly, messes up the Latin. The teacher says Hank, hawk, and she hears hang hog.
And then comes the famous bad pun. Hang hog is Latin for bacon.
Exactly. The word bacon is right there on the page.
Yeah.
But Wigston doesn't just look at the word, he counts. Imagine him with a magnifying glass, counting every single word down that column, 1, 2, 3, all the way down.
And where does bacon fall?
He claims that bacon is the 268th word on the page.
Okay, 268, kind of a random number. What does it match?
He turns to Bacon's History of Henry VII, the first edition. He goes to page 21. On that page, he finds the words stage play.
I think I know where this is going.
He counts the words on that page, and he asserts that stage play is the 268th word.
Get out.
That's his claim. You have Bacon at word 268 on page 53 of the plays. You have stage play at word 268 in the history.
And page 53 is the page in the Rosicrucian manifesto that attacks the stage player.
Exactly. The triangulation is complete.
Okay, look. I'm a skeptic. I feel like if you count words in enough books, you'll eventually find a match. But that is a very specific triangulation. Page 53, word 268, Bacon, stage play. It's either the most elaborate coincidence in history or someone was having a lot of fun with the typesetting.
Wigston argues it's a lock and key. It's designed so that only someone looking for the authorship, someone initiated, would find it. It's a proof of ownership baked right into the math of the book.
It definitely adds a layer of Da Vinci Code to the whole thing. But let's zoom out for a second, because my big question with all these Baconian theories is always why.
Why do it, Joel?
Right. Why go to all this trouble? Why write Hamlet and King Lear, arguably the greatest works in the English language, and then slap a phantom name on them? Why hide?
That is the ultimate question. And Wigston's answer is actually quite profound. He believes the plays were a vehicle of secret knowledge.
A vehicle?
Think about the era, 1600s England. It's a season of barbarism, as Wigston calls it. You have religious conflict. You have monarchs who will chop off your head if you write the wrong thing about politics or the church.
True.
Bacon had a philosophy that was revolutionary. Science, observation, challenging authority.
Stuff that could literally get you burned at the stake.
Or at least imprisoned and ruined. So Wigston argues Bacon couldn't put his name on it. Instead, he wove his philosophy into the most popular, unassuming media of the day, the theater. He hid the pill in the cheese.
So The Tempest isn't just a fairy tale about a wizard, it's a treatise on science and nature.
Exactly. And Wigston points to Timon of Athens to prove this.
Yeah.
It isn't just a play about a grumpy guy. It's a philosophical breakdown of misanthropy versus stoicism, a distinction Bacon was obsessed with.
How so?
Wigston points out that the character Ape Mantis in Timon is a cynic. He's dog-like, he barks at people. But Timon is a true misanthrope. Bacon wrote extensively on this specific difference, drawing from ancient texts like Plutarch and Lucian.
So the play relies heavily on distinctions found specifically in Bacon's philosophy.
Right. And there's another great example Wigston finds regarding nature. Bacon wrote about the Georgics of the mind, this idea of cultivating the mind like a garden to pull out the weeds of bad habits.
And that shows up in the plays, too.
Heavily in King Lear. The play uses this exact metaphor, talking about furrow weeds and neglected ground to represent a mind losing its reason. The plays are the philosophy in action.
So by hiding it in the plays, he ensures the philosophy survives.
Precisely. A dry philosophical text might be burned or just forgotten. But a play lives forever. People memorize it, they perform it.
That makes sense.
The secret knowledge survives the dark ages inside the Trojan horse of entertainment, waiting to be rediscovered when the world is ready.
Rediscovered by people like us 400 years later.
That's the idea. He suggests the plays are basically a time capsule.
It really changes how you look at the bookshelf. I don't know if I fully buy the page 53 numerology. My brain still hurts a little from that. But the psychological parallels,
They are strong.
the Richard III deformity connection, the Edmund envy connection, that is hard to ignore.
It forces you to read closer. Even if you don't believe Bacon wrote every single word, you have to admit that the mind behind these plays was steeped in the same specific, high-level philosophy that Bacon was writing.
So here's a final provocative thought for everyone listening to mull over on your own. Wigston calls the plays a vehicle. If that's true, then we aren't just the audience watching a show, we're the mechanics.
I like that.
We're the ones supposed to pop the hood and figure out how the engine actually works. And maybe there are other texts from that era serving as vehicles for ideas that were just too dangerous to say out loud.
And judging by Wigston's work, there might still be plenty of gears and levers in those texts we haven't even found yet.
The mystery is definitely still open. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Phantom Captain. We'll see you next time.